Why was a 17-year-old girl stepping onto ground meant for hardened soldiers? No one at Horizon Academy had the answer. Not yet. The Montana mountains stretched out like an endless cathedral, peaks crowned with pale morning light, air crisp enough to sting the lungs. Horizon wasn't a place for tourists or curious teenagers. It was a crucible, a training ground built for those who wanted to push rifles beyond their limits, where a shot wasn't just about hitting steel at 1,000 meters. It was about carving yourself into something sharper, steadier, almost inhuman. The veterans gathered that morning weren't here to make friends. They were here because failure meant death on some future battlefield. Each one carried ghosts. Each one carried pride. And each one turned to watch the black SUV roll up the gravel road. The vehicle was out of place. Sleek, polished, bearing government plates. Its engine hummed differently than the battered trucks parked nearby, machines with dirt still clinging to their tires. When the door opened, silence spread across the yard. A slender girl stepped out, copper-brown hair pulled into a simple ponytail, a small duffel bag slung across her shoulder. No tactical gear, no bravado, just quiet focus in the way she moved, scanning the academy grounds as if memorizing every angle of the compound. Master Sergeant James "Old Bull" Thompson narrowed his eyes. At 68, Bull had seen just about everything. Young men eager to prove themselves, washed-out veterans desperate for one more taste of the life. But this, a teenager, barely more than a child, walking into his world as though she belonged. His jaw tightened. Beside him, Sarah Mitchell folded her arms. 20 years in the Marine Corps had hardened her into a presence that carried weight without her ever needing to raise her voice. She studied the girl carefully. Something in the way she walked, a precision too practiced for her age, made Sarah uneasy. "Miss Lawson," Bull said, stepping forward, voice graveled by decades of command. "I'm Master Sergeant Thompson. This is Sarah Mitchell, lead instructor here." The girl met his gaze, hazel eyes calm. "Thank you for the opportunity, Master Sergeant, Ms. Mitchell." Her tone was measured, deliberate, neither shy nor defiant. Sarah watched her closely. "Your father said you've had some prior training." For just a flicker, something crossed the girl's face, annoyance, maybe even anger. "My father shouldn't have mentioned that," she replied evenly. "I'd prefer to be evaluated on what I demonstrate here, not on hearsay." Bull and Sarah exchanged a glance. That wasn't the response they expected. Most teenagers would have tried to prove themselves with big words or nervous humor. This one refused to play either game. "Fair enough," Bull said at last. "Orientation started yesterday. You'll need to catch up. Sarah will show you to your quarters." As Sarah led Emily Lawson away, Bull felt an unease settle in his gut. Something didn't add up. 17-year-olds didn't carry themselves like that. That afternoon, the new class gathered at the 100-meter range for their first tests. Each shooter unpacked expensive rifles, customized stocks, and precision optics. Some wore tactical pants, branded boots, ballistic glasses, armor against failure. Emily wore jeans, hiking boots, and a plain navy windbreaker. She opened her case and pulled out a well-worn Remington 700. No modifications, no flash. A basic scope, scratched from use. Reliable but ordinary. "Standard qualification course," Sarah announced. 5 rounds, prone position, 100 meters, just a baseline before we push you further. One by one, the students took their positions. The crack of rifles echoed, brass casings spun into dirt, and tight clusters formed on targets. 3-inch groups, respectable, controlled. When Emily stepped forward, whispers began. Marcus Reed, a former ranger, muttered just loud enough for others to hear. "Didn't realize we were running daycare." Emily ignored him. She lay down smoothly, her body folding into position with practiced efficiency. Bull noticed her breathing pattern, different from standard training. Slower, almost meditative. The first shot snapped downrange. It missed the target completely. A few quiet laughs broke out. Reed smirked. Emily chambered the next round without hesitation. Fired. The bullet clipped the edge of the paper. The third shot struck the outer ring. The fourth and fifth crept closer toward the center, but nothing impressive. "Guess the apple fell far from the tree," Reed said. This time he didn't bother lowering his voice. Emily said nothing. She packed up her rifle, expression unreadable. Later in his office, Bull flipped through the performance metrics. Sarah stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "Something off with the Lawson girl," she said flatly. "Besides the fact she can barely qualify at 100 meters," Bull replied. "That's just it. Her fundamentals are solid, stance, grip, breathing. Her results don't match." Bull leaned back, eyes narrowing, like she's holding back. Sarah nodded. "Exactly." That night Bull walked the academy grounds. Old habits kept him restless when something didn't feel right. He passed the library, an old barn converted into shelves of manuals, ballistic charts, and field notes. A light was still on. Through the window he saw Emily, alone, surrounded by books on external ballistics, meteorology, advanced marksmanship theory. She wasn't just reading, she was taking meticulous notes, calculating formulas, cross-referencing tables. Her pen moved with intensity, her eyes locked in concentration. These weren't the actions of a beginner, not even of an enthusiast. This was preparation, methodical, purpose-driven. Bull stood there for several minutes, his jaw tight. Then he walked away without making his presence known. Dawn came cold, breath clouding in the mountain air. Sarah found Emily already at the 300-meter range, rifle assembled but unloaded. She was dry-firing, practicing her trigger squeeze, her eye movements, her breath. "You're up early," Sarah said, setting her coffee down. Emily didn't look up. Old habit. "Your brother teach you that." Emily froze for half a second, then resumed her practice. Michael believed preparation separated the living from the dead. Sarah lowered herself to the bench. "I served with him, 2 deployments to Afghanistan. He was one of the best." Emily's eyes flicked toward her, studying. "You never mentioned that. You never asked." For a moment, Emily's guarded expression softened, a ghost of a smile. "That sounds like him." But Sarah didn't let it linger. "Your performance yesterday doesn't reflect the training I'd expect Michael to have given you." Emily's expression shut down again. "I have a lot to learn." "Cut the act," Sarah said bluntly. "I saw you dry fire just now. Your form's impeccable, so why the deliberate misses?" Emily stayed silent, weighing something. Finally she asked, "Did my father ask you to accept me here?" "He made a case," Sarah admitted, "but that's not why we agreed." "Then why?" "Because I owed Michael that much. Now I'm wondering if I made a mistake." Emily shouldered her rifle, staring downrange. Her voice was quiet but edged with steel. "I'm not here to play games, Miss Mitchell." "Then why pretend?" Sarah pressed. Emily reached into her pocket, pulled out a single rifle casing and placed it in Sarah's hand. It was a .338 Lapua Magnum, engraved with 2 words, "For Michael." Sarah froze, her thumb traced the letters. "Where did you get this?" "It doesn't matter," Emily said, tucking it away again. "What matters is that I'm here to learn, really learn." Sarah's voice lowered. "Does Bull know about this?" Emily shook her head, "And I'd prefer to keep it that way." The sun climbed higher, casting sharp lines across the range. But Sarah couldn't shake the unease. She'd seen prodigies before. She trained them. She buried some of them. Emily Lawson was no ordinary student, and whatever brought her here, it wasn't just legacy or stubbornness. It was something else, something hidden. And for the first time in years, Sarah felt that gnawing sense of anticipation she hadn't felt since Afghanistan. The kind that came before things broke wide open. Because Emily Lawson wasn't just a teenager at a shooting academy. She was a secret waiting to detonate. What secret was Emily Lawson hiding? That question gnawed at Sarah through the long Montana night. She had trained Marines in deserts, jungles, and mountains. She had seen every kind of arrogance and every kind of fear, but deliberate mediocrity, a teenager who could shoot cleaner during dry fire than she did under live rounds, that was something else entirely. The next morning, Bull gathered the students at the 600-meter range. The sun hadn't yet burned off the mist, and the air carried a damp bite. Wooden targets stood like pale ghosts at the far end of the valley. Spotter and shooter rotations, Bull ordered. His voice was gravel and iron. One magazine each, switch roles, focus on wind calls, elevation adjustments, no gadgets, no calculators, just your eyes, your instincts, and your judgment. The group spread out, pairs forming naturally, old hands teaming with new, law enforcement with military. Sarah maneuvered deliberately, positioning herself beside Emily. "You and me," she said. Emily nodded, no protest, no attempt to avoid the scrutiny. When it was Emily's turn to shoot, Sarah noticed the same pattern. Every shot landed exactly where Emily wanted it, not where it should have gone. High, low, left, right. A convincing portrait of inconsistency. But Sarah's trained eye caught the truth. Emily wasn't missing. She was painting. Each deviation measured, precise, deliberate. The girl was crafting the illusion of mediocrity with more skill than most shooters used to hit center mass. "Wind shifting right to left, 8 miles an hour, Sarah called out. Emily adjusted slightly, just enough to miss by a margin Sarah recognized instantly. Sarah raised her voice for the others. "You're overthinking it, Lawson." Then, lowering her tone so only Emily could hear, "You're not fooling me." Emily's gaze never left the scope. Her lips barely moved. "Good, I need someone who sees clearly." Sarah's chest tightened. She had been right, the girl was holding back, and the question was no longer if, it was why. Later that day, while the others practiced tactical movement drills, Bull summoned Sarah to his office. The old Marine sat behind his desk, a file open before him. His weathered fingers tapped against the folder, his eyes narrowed. "Everything we've got on Michael Lawson," he said. Sarah flipped through the pages. Service record, commendations, deployment notes, the official report of his death. "A helicopter crash," she murmured. "Routine transport mission 2023. "Sanitized," Bull said. His voice carried the bitterness of a man who had seen truth buried under paperwork too many times. Michael was MARSOC's top sniper. Men like that don't die on routine flights. Sarah looked up. "You think it was something else?" "I think his sister knows more than she's saying." Bull leaned back in his chair, eyes hard. "What's your read?" "She's hiding something," Sarah admitted. "But it doesn't feel malicious. More like she's protecting something or someone." Bull's jaw tightened. "Keep digging. I don't like mysteries under my roof." That evening, the Academy's security system tripped an alert. Frank Wilson, the administrator, patched through to Bull's radio. "Bull, we've got visitors, armed, modified pickup at the gate." Bull's shoulders stiffened. "Sarah, with me." They approached the main gate together, boots crunching gravel, tension coiling tight. 4 men stood outside a lifted truck, muscular, tattooed, wearing tactical gear more suited to a war zone than Montana. At their center was Mason Davis. Bull's face hardened. "You're trespassing, Davis." Davis smiled without warmth. His shaved head caught the fatting sunlight, and his cold blue eyes flicked across the compound with predatory calculation. "Just a neighborly visit, Bull. Heard you've got new blood training out here." "Your facility's a glorified shooting club for wannabes," Bull shot back. "My students aren't interested." Davis's gaze shifted, landed on Sarah. He tilted his head, studying her. "Mitchell, isn't it? MARSOC, Afghanistan." Sarah kept her voice cool. "My service record isn't your concern." "Maybe because she held the American long-distance record for 5 years," Bull interjected. His tone was sharp, protective. Recognition flickered in Davis's eyes. His smile thinned. Impressive. Shame talent like that gets wasted under Bull's antique methods. He turned back to Thompson. Word of advice. Training like yours, not welcome in these mountains. Some of us don't appreciate the secrets you're keeping. With that, Davis and his men returned to their truck and rolled away. Sarah turned. Who the hell was that? Mason Davis, former SEAL, dishonorably discharged 2018, runs a camp down the road, calls it Patriot training, but it's nothing more than a militia grooming ground. And his interest in me. Bull's voice dropped. We have history. I sat on the board that discharged him. He's hated me ever since. Unseen from the mess hall window, Emily watched the entire exchange. Her knuckles whitened against the sill. That night Sarah caught Emily slipping out of the dorm. She followed silently, boots crunching softly in the dark. The girl moved like she'd rehearsed every step, carrying a rifle case and a small pack. Past the training zones, beyond the tree line, to a secluded ridge overlooking a valley. Emily set up her position with clinical efficiency. But it wasn't the Remington this time. Sarah's breath caught. It was a Che TAC M300 intervention, custom-built, worth more than most vehicles, and far beyond what a teenager should have access to. For nearly an hour, Emily worked silently. She checked wind with a pocket meter, scribbled notes in a small book, adjusted her scope with tiny, precise movements. Finally, she loaded a single round. Her breathing slowed, her body stilled. The shot cracked through the night, echoing across the valley. Sarah raised her binoculars. A small steel target placed 2 kilometers away swayed from the impact, dead center. Emily didn't fire again. She packed up with the same careful precision, rising to leave. Sarah stepped out from the shadows. Nice rifle. Emily didn't flinch. I wondered if you'd follow me. The Che TAC isn't beginner equipment. It was Michael, Emily said softly. Her voice wavered for the first time. Custom built for him. That explains the rifle. It doesn't explain the secret training or the deliberate misses in daylight. Emily's composure cracked. She looked at Sarah, eyes sharp with a pain far older than 17 years. It's complicated. Uncomplicated. Or I wake Bull right now and you're on the first flight back to Washington. Emily hesitated, then she gestured to a fallen log. You might want to sit. And for the first time, she began to tell the truth. She spoke of growing up in the shadow of her father, Senator Robert Lawson, of idolizing her older brother Michael, the Marine who had defied their father's politics to serve. She spoke of the bond they shared, how Michael had taught her to shoot when she was 12, not as a game but as discipline. 2 years ago he was killed, she said. Officially a helicopter crash, but my father got whispers that it wasn't an accident. Sarah listened, heart tightening. I found a letter he sent me. Late, delayed in the system. He wrote about being worried, said there was someone in his unit he couldn't trust, someone named Mason. Sarah felt her blood run cold. Mason Davis. My father tried to push for answers, Emily continued. The investigation was shut down, insufficient evidence, so I did what he couldn't. I started preparing. Sarah's voice was quiet but firm. You're not ready to face men like Davis, not alone. I don't want revenge, Emily said, her voice hardening. I want the truth, and I want to stop him before he gets more people killed. Sarah studied her. A child, but not a child. A prodigy carrying the weight of something that could break grown men. You keep this from Bull? She asked. Emily nodded. Not yet. Give me time, please. If I'm wrong, no harm done. If I'm right. She let the silence finish the sentence. Sarah sighed. Every instinct screamed to shut this down, but she saw Michael's eyes in the girl's resolve. The kind of fire that doesn't burn out, it only burns brighter. 3 days, Sarah said finally. You have 3 days to bring me something concrete. Then Bull finds out whether you like it or not. Emily nodded, relief flickering across her face. As they walked back through the dark, Sarah's thoughts churned. The impossible shot in Afghanistan, 3,800 meters, a casing etched with "For Michael." She glanced sideways at the girl beside her, moving with quiet determination through the night. It couldn't be coincidence. It couldn't be possible. Could it? How far would she go to keep the truth hidden? That question weighed on Sarah the next morning as she stepped onto the gravel of the 1,000-meter range. The air was razor-sharp cold, the kind that made lungs burn. Targets glinted in the distance like faint silver coins. The students assembled in pairs, rifles slung, scopes already fogging with their breath. Emily walked quietly among them, her Remington in hand again, her mask, her disguise. Bull watched from the instructor's platform, face carved from stone. Sarah caught his eye. He'd been watching Emily closely, too closely. "Spotter and shooter," he barked. "Switch every 5 rounds. I want clean adjustments, clean comms, and no excuses." Marcus Reed, the ex-ranger, muttered something under his breath about babysitting. He didn't hide his smirk when Emily paired with Sarah. Emily lay down in the dirt, movement smooth, breathing steady. Through her scope she adjusted and missed high, then low, then clipped an edge. To the untrained it looked like sloppiness. To Sarah it was too perfect. She leaned close, whispering, still playing the fool. Emily's eye never left the scope, still watching too closely. Sarah's jaw clenched. This wasn't a game. After the drill, Bull called Sarah into his office. A single brass casing lay on his desk. A .338 Lapua Magnum, words etched into the metal. Some secrets stay buried. "Where did this come from?" Sarah asked, dread coiling in her stomach. "Left on the main firing line last night," Bull said. His tone was ice. "Perimeter breach. No alarms, no tracks." "Davis," Sarah muttered. "Most likely." Bull's eyes were hard. But how did he know to leave this, and why that caliber? Sarah hesitated. She knew. God help her, she knew. But Emily had begged for time. "Bull," Sarah began carefully, "there's something you should know about Emily." "I already know enough," Bull cut in. His jaw tightened. "She's hiding something. The question is whether it puts this academy in danger." Before Sarah could answer, a rifle crack echoed across the mountains. Instinct pulled them both toward the sound. But it wasn't an intruder. It was Marcus Reed, taking early practice at the 1,000-meter line. His grouping was tight, his confidence louder than his muzzle blast. Bull studied Reed's target through binoculars. "Solid performance," he said evenly. Then, without looking away, he added, "But some performances are nothing but surface." Sarah knew the comment wasn't for Reed. It was for her. That night, Bull waited at the range before dawn, black coffee steaming in his hand. Emily appeared, surprised to find him there. "Starting today," he said without preamble, "I'm taking over your training personally." Her eyes flickered. "I appreciate the attention, sir, but—" "This isn't a negotiation." His tone left no room for protest. "Your equipment set it up." Emily hesitated. She opened her case. The battered Remington gleamed dully in the morning light. "Not that one," Bull said coldly. "The Che tac, the one you've been sneaking out at night." Emily froze. The mask slipped just for a moment. Her face paled. "Sir, we're past pretense," Bull snapped. "Show me what you can really do, or pack your bags." For a long beat, Emily didn't move. Then, without a word, she turned back toward the dorm. 10 minutes later, she returned carrying the custom Che tac case. "That's more like it," Bull said. She assembled the rifle with practiced efficiency, barrel, scope, bipod, bolt. Her hands didn't shake. Every movement was smooth, automatic. "Target 500 meters," Bull ordered. 5 rounds, center mass." Emily lay prone. Her breathing slowed, her body stilled. 5 shots cracked across the range. Each one punched the same hole, the grouping so tight the paper nearly vanished. Bull said nothing. He handed her a wind meter. "Read it." She checked. 11.3 miles per hour from 4 o'clock. And adjustment. Without hesitation, she rattled off precise compensation, factoring bullet weight, muzzle velocity, and atmospheric density. Bull's eyes narrowed. He pushed her harder. 1,000 meters, then 1,500, then 2,000. Prone, kneeling, supported, unsupported. She hit everything he called, her adjustments flawless, her composure unbreakable. Finally, he pointed to the 2,000-meter target, standing. Emily looked up. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. Standing at this distance is impossible. Your brother could, Bull said. His voice was flat, deliberate. Her breath caught. 3 out of 5, he added, at least. Anger flared in her eyes. She set her stance. Raised the heavy rifle, missed the first. Hit the edge on the second, missed again. Disappointing, Bull said coldly. Maybe Sarah overestimated you. Her jaw tightened. Fury burned away the doubt. She reset her stance, fired again. Bullseye, then another. Bull studied her through narrowed eyes. Better, but still not enough. You're not even close to what you're capable of, he said. Her voice broke sharp. With respect, sir, how would you know what I'm capable of? Because I've seen what you've already done, Bull said quietly. She froze. Before she could respond, Sarah appeared at the edge of the range, urgency in her voice. Bull, you need to see this. In the office, Frank had pulled up a computer screen. Social media. A post from the Black Eagle Patriot Training Center. Photos of Horizon's grounds. Photos of the students. Photos of Emily stepping out of her SUV. The caption, foreign snipers trained on American soil. Who are they really preparing to target? Time to expose the traitors in our midst. Sarah's face darkened. They've identified her, Senator's daughter, she's the target. Bull's jaw tightened. Double security. No one trains alone, and call the senator. He needs to know her cover's blown. As Frank reached for the phone, Bull turned to Emily. Training resumes at 0500, he said. Circumstances have changed. We don't have the luxury of time anymore. Later that night, Sarah found Emily in the library, surrounded by papers and diagrams. Not novels, not light reading, but ballistic tables, encrypted communications, financial ledgers. How was Bull? Sarah asked quietly. Emily looked up, eyes tired but steady. Brutal, enlightening. Sarah lowered herself across from her. He knows. Emily's shoulders tensed. How much? Enough to take you seriously, Sarah said, then softer. But there's still something you haven't told us. About Afghanistan, about Michael. For a long time, Emily didn't answer. Then finally, I was there. Sarah blinked. In Afghanistan when he died. Emily nodded. Her voice dropped, barely above a whisper. She spoke of the visit her brother had arranged, disguised as part of an educational program. She spoke of sneaking out to the remote observation post where Michael had promised to teach her long-distance shooting. The day before he died, he trained me, she said. Her eyes were distant. Hours. He taught me things I'd never even read about. How to read mirages. How to account for humidity at elevation. He said I was better than most of the snipers he'd trained. Her hands clenched. He left for a mission, told me to stay. He never came back. Davis did, with 2 others. They didn't know I was there. I heard them arguing. Davis kept saying, no witnesses, clean sight. Sarah's blood went cold. They covered it up, Emily said, voice steady but trembling at the edges. The official story was a crash, but Michael found something. Weapons being sold to warlords. American weapons. Davis was part of it. He had to silence him. Sarah's throat tightened. You're sure? I'm sure, Emily said, because I heard it with my own ears, and because I've spent every day since then proving it. Sarah studied her, heart twisting. And the shot, the one in Afghanistan, 3,800 meters, the casing marked for Michael, that was you, wasn't it? Emily's silence was answer enough. God, Sarah whispered. Emily looked down at her hands. I wasn't trying to set a record. I was trying to stop a man from detonating his vest. I made the shot I needed to make. Sarah sat back, mind reeling. A 17-year-old girl had done the impossible, and no one knew. Before either could say more, the library door creaked. Bull stood in the doorway, face unreadable. Sarah, a word. Outside, he handed her a thick folder, classified documents. Your contacts came through, he said. Everything on Davis's last deployment. Sarah flipped through, her chest tightening. Unauthorized weapons distribution. Investigations buried. Michael Lawson's name in the margins. She looked up sharply. This confirms it. There's more, Bull said. Intel suggests Davis isn't just hiding. He's building, stockpiling weapons, training veterans, planning something bigger. Sarah's stomach dropped. What? Bull's face was grim. Restoration. The word hung in the air, heavy and dangerous. Emily Lawson wasn't just chasing justice for her brother. She was walking straight into a war no one else even knew had begun. What did restoration mean? The word echoed in Sarah's head all night, heavy as lead. She'd seen insurgent groups give themselves noble names before: freedom brigades, guardians, defenders. Always a disguise for blood and ruin. But this was different. A movement seeded in American soil, cloaked in patriotism. By morning, Bull had locked the compound down. Checkpoints doubled. Night watches tripled. The academy, once just a crucible for training, now felt like a fortress under siege. The students noticed. Whispered questions passed through the barracks. Reed was the loudest. What the hell are we defending against anyway? A washed-up SEAL and his beer-belly militia. Bull ignored him, but Sarah caught the unease spreading. Doubt was poison, and Reed was stirring the cup. Emily, meanwhile, trained harder than anyone. If Bull demanded 1,000 meters standing, she did it until her shoulders trembled and her breath rasped. If Sarah pushed her on wind calls, she worked formulas until her notebook overflowed with scribbles. But beneath her discipline, Sarah saw the cracks. The girl was burning herself alive, chasing a ghost she could never catch, her brother's shadow. One evening, after the others had turned in, Sarah found Emily still at the range, her cheek pressed against the stock, eyes glassy with exhaustion. Enough, Sarah said gently. Emily didn't move. Not until I can make it clean. Every time, no mistakes. You'll kill yourself like this. Better me than someone else, Emily whispered. Her voice cracked. Michael said, he said precision saves lives, but I wasn't precise enough that night if I had followed him. Sarah crouched beside her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. Stop. You're not responsible for what happened. Emily's eyes brimmed, anger and grief colliding. Then why does it feel like I am? Sarah didn't answer, because she knew that guilt. She carried it herself since Hellman, since the ambush that took her spotter while she lived. It never left. It only reshaped itself into drive. Listen to me, Sarah said softly. You can't train to erase the past. You train so the next person doesn't carry the same weight. Emily swallowed hard. For the first time, she didn't argue. The next day, Bull gathered them in the main hall. Maps spread across the table. Satellite photos. Supply chain diagrams. This is what we're up against, he said. His voice carried the authority of decades, but also the fatigue of a man who'd seen this too many times. Restoration isn't just Davis's ego trip. He's moving arms, high-grade, untraceable, likely from old military stockpiles, and he's recruiting. Disillusioned vets, young radicals, mercenaries. They're building towards something big. Reed scoffed. So what? A few backwoods commandos shooting at cans in the forest. Bull's eyes snapped to him. Those men you're laughing at, they'll put holes in your chest before you even shoulder your rifle. Don't underestimate them. The room went still. Emily studied the maps. Her finger traced a line between warehouses marked with red circles. These shipments, they're not random. They form a chain, east to west. They're stockpiling near population centers. Bull frowned. You sure? She nodded. Michael used to teach me how to pattern logistics. Look at the intervals, 6 days apart. If the schedule holds, the next transfer is tomorrow night. Sarah leaned in. Where? Emily pointed to a highway spur 30 miles south. A forgotten truck stop, half abandoned. Bull studied her. You think you can read all this better than us? Emily didn't flinch. No, I think Michael taught me how to notice what others miss. For a moment's silence, then Bull gave a slow nod. All right, we test it, recon only. Sarah Lawson, you're with me. The following night, under a crescent moon, they rolled down dark backroads in an unmarked SUV. Emily sat in the back, rifle case across her knees, eyes scanning every shadow. They parked a mile out. The rest they covered on foot, moving through scrub and pine. Sarah kept her pace matched to Emily's, watching how the girl carried herself. Quiet, controlled, too controlled for 17. From the ridge above the truck stop they saw it, headlights cutting through the night. 2 semis, their trailers sealed, men with rifles directing them into the lot. Through binoculars, Sarah counted at least 20 operators, ex-military by the look of their kit. Then she saw him, Mason Davis, standing at the center barking orders. His voice carried across the lot, rough as gravel. Keep it tight, offload in 30, we move at dawn. Beside him, crates were stacked, wooden, marked with faded U.S. ordnance stamps. Sarah's stomach dropped. Emily's hands clenched around her scope. Those are heavy weapons, RPGs, maybe even stingers. Bull's jaw was tight. We can't engage too many. We observe, document, pull out. But then movement. A guard broke from the group, climbing the ridge with a flashlight. Cover, Bull hissed. They pressed low against the earth. The beam swung closer. Emily's breath quickened. Sarah put a steady hand on her arm. When the guard passed, Bull whispered, time to move, now. But Emily lingered, her scope fixed on Davis. Sarah caught the look in her eyes, that raw hunger, justice, revenge. Don't, Sarah whispered. Emily's finger trembled against the trigger guard. If you fire, we're all dead, Sarah pressed. Michael wouldn't want this, not like this. The girl's breath shuddered. Then finally she lowered the rifle. They exfiltrated silently, slipping back through the woods. Back at Horizon, Bull slammed a fist against the map table. He's accelerating. If those shipments reach Denver, Chicago, God knows where else, restoration goes from a militia to an army. Frank, the administrator, cleared his throat. Then we call it in. FBI, ATF, whoever will listen. Bull's voice was bitter. We've tried. Washington won't touch this. Davis has friends in the shadows. Too many ears plugged, too many eyes turned away. The room went quiet. Emily stepped forward. Then we do it ourselves. Bull stared at her. You're a child. I'm a shooter, Emily shot back. Her voice didn't waver. And the only reason you even know where Davis is tonight is because of me. The words hung in the air like a shot. Sarah broke the silence. She's right. Like it or not, she has insight none of us do. And if Davis is planning something bigger, we don't have the luxury of waiting. Bull's eyes flicked between them. Finally, he exhaled, long and heavy. Fine, we move at dawn. Limited team. Recon plus interdiction if we can manage it. But listen to me. His voice dropped into steel. No heroics. No one dies chasing ghosts. Later in the barracks, Emily lay awake staring at the ceiling. The J-tac rested by her bed. Sarah sat across from her, cleaning her sidearm in silence. You should hate me, Emily whispered. Sarah looked up startled. Why? Because I'm dragging you into something that isn't your fight. Sarah set the weapon down. Kid, I've been fighting someone else's wars my whole life. This one feels different, feels like the kind that matters. Emily's throat tightened. What if I fail? Sarah's voice softened. Then you fail with people who will carry the weight with you. That's the difference. For the first time, Emily's walls cracked. Tears slipped silent. She turned away, but Sarah didn't call it out, didn't shame her, just let the girl feel it. Because tomorrow there'd be no room for softness. The sun hadn't yet risen when they moved out. Engines hummed low, rifles secured. The mountain air was sharp with frost. Bull sat behind the wheel, Sarah in the passenger seat. Emily rode in the back, hands gripping the Che-tac case like it was lifeline and burden all at once. Today, Bull said, voice steady, we find out whether restoration is smoke or fire. Emily stared out the window, dawn light breaking over the ridges. Her heart pounded, but her resolve was steady. Because this wasn't just about Davis anymore. It was about Michael, about the truth, about whether one girl, 17 years old, could carry the weight of a nation's shadows on her shoulders. And deep down, Sarah knew, whatever happened next, nothing would be the same again. What happens when training collides with reality? That question pressed against Emily's ribs as the SUV rolled silently down the forest road. The morning sun bled weakly through the trees, casting fractured light across the gravel. Bull drove with the steadiness of a man who had crossed hostile ground too many times to count. Sarah sat in the passenger seat, eyes locked on the road ahead, one hand resting near her sidearm. Emily sat in the back, the Che-tac case across her knees, her pulse thrumming in her throat. They weren't here to shoot, Bull had said. They were here to see, document, confirm. But Emily knew better. Missions rarely stayed what they were supposed to be. At a narrow pull-off, Bull killed the engine. We go on foot from here, quarter-mile to the highway spur. They dismounted quietly, rifles slung, boots crunching against frost-hardened earth. The woods were still, breath of winter in the air. Every twig snap felt like thunder. Emily moved between them, her pack heavier than she'd admit. Her body remembered Michael's lessons, heel-to-toe steps, weight evenly distributed, avoid loose rocks, keep low. She wasn't thinking about breathing anymore. It was instinct. When they reached the ridge, Bull signaled them down. From the cover of brush, they looked down onto the cracked asphalt of an abandoned truck stop. It was alive with movement. Two semis idled, trailers open, forklifts groaning as crates were offloaded into waiting pickups. Men in plate carriers directed the work, their rifles slung casual but ready. More stood watch, scanning the tree lines with restless eyes. Sarah's binoculars swept the scene. At least 30, gears high-end. Comms, nods, suppressors, not your average backwoods play soldiers. Emily's stomach twisted. She studied these patterns for months, traced the chains of supply. Seeing it in flesh and steel was different, real, terrifying. Then she saw him, Mason Davis, broad-shouldered, shaved head, moving with the confidence of a man who owned the ground beneath him. He barked orders, pointed to crates marked with faded military stencils. Heavy weapons, exactly as she'd feared. "God damn," Bull muttered. "Stingers, that's anti-air. He's gearing up for something big." Sarah adjusted focus. "Looks like RPGs too, if those scatter into cities." "We're past recon," Bull cut in. His voice was low, hard. "We can't let that convoy leave." Emily's heart seized. "There's too many, we'd be cut down." "Not if we level the playing field," Bull said. He pointed to the fuel tank of a semi. "One spark in the wrong place, their firepower turns into their coffin." Sarah frowned. "And us with it if we're sloppy." Bull's gaze shifted to Emily. "Can you make the shot?" The world seemed to tilt. 30 armed men below, each one a threat. The tank sat exposed, a small, vulnerable spot. Range, nearly 800 meters. Emily's hands trembled against the Che-tac case. She remembered Michael's voice. Precision saves lives. She swallowed hard. Yes. They set up quickly, Sarah covering with her carbine, Bull watching the flanks. Emily assembled the rifle, hand steadier once the familiar weight was in her grip. She adjusted scope, calculated wind, checked elevation. Her breath slowed. Through the reticle, the world narrowed. The chaos below shrank to a single vulnerable target. One shot. She squeezed. The crack echoed across the valley. The bullet struck true. The semi's tank erupted in a violent bloom of fire. A roar tore through the lot as flames swallowed crates, vehicles, men. Shouts turned to screams, gunfire snapping wildly into the trees. "Move," Bull barked. They slipped back down the ridge, boots pounding earth. Branches whipped their faces, smoke and chaos trailing behind. But the militia wasn't blind. Gunfire cracked through the forest, bullets chewing bark inches from them. Sarah returned controlled bursts, keeping heads down. Bull moved with grim precision, decades of instinct guiding him. Emily ran, lungs burning, clutching the tack against her chest. They reached the SUV, threw themselves inside. Bull jammed the key, engine roaring. Tires spat gravel as they tore down the road. Bullets followed, glass spiderwebbing across the rear window. Emily ducked, heart hammering. Sarah leaned out the window, firing measured shots to discourage pursuit. When they finally hit paved road, Bull pushed the speed, eyes hard. "We rattled the hornet's nest. They'll come looking." Emily sat in the back, body trembling, mind spinning. She had made the shot. She had stopped the convoy. But the images of burning men, of bodies writhing in flame, seared her mind. Her stomach heaved. She turned away, pressed against the window, fighting bile. Sarah glanced back. She didn't speak, didn't soften. She knew the first time always left scars. Back at Horizon, Bull slammed the SUV door and stalked inside without a word. Sarah lingered with Emily by the vehicle. "You did what had to be done," she said quietly. Emily shook her head. "I killed them." "You saved more lives than you'll ever know," Sarah countered. Her tone was firm, but her eyes carried something softer. "Don't lose sight of that." But Emily couldn't shake the screams. They echoed in her chest long after the sun went down. That night the academy bristled like a cornered animal. Floodlights lit the perimeter. Guards doubled their patrols. The students whispered, restless, sensing the shift but not knowing the details. Reed cornered Emily in the mess hall, voice dripping with mockery. "So, what's the senator's little girl really doing here? Playing war games while Daddy cuts deals in D.C. Emily froze, tray clattering against the counter. Sarah appeared at her side, voice sharp. "Back off, Reed." He sneered. "Just saying what everyone's thinking. She doesn't belong here." Emily's jaw tightened, but before she could speak, Bull entered. His voice cut the room like a blade. "Enough. She's here because she's earned it. Any man who disagrees can pack his bags." Reed's smirk faltered. Emily met Bull's gaze. For the first time she saw something in his eyes, not suspicion, not scrutiny, respect. Later, alone in her bunk, Emily pulled the engraved casing from her pocket. For Michael. She turned it over in her hand, heat from the fire still burning in her memory. "Am I becoming what you wanted?" she whispered into the dark. "Or something else entirely?" Her hand trembled, but she didn't put the casing away. She clutched it tight, as if holding onto her brother might keep her steady. Across the compound, Bull and Sarah pored over intel. Davis had escaped the fire. Worse, satellite imagery showed his men regrouping, angry and unbroken. "He'll come for us now," Sarah said grimly. Bull nodded, "and when he does, we'll be ready." But Emily lay awake, staring into the ceiling, knowing deep down the truth. Readiness wasn't enough. Davis wouldn't stop until he had what he wanted. And what he wanted was her. What happens when the hunter becomes the hunted? That question woke Emily in the dead of night, long before the alarm sounded. She lay still, staring at the faint glow of the security lights filtering through her barracks window, her hand wrapped around the tack case like it was a lifeline. The explosion came first, a deep, rolling thunder that shook the earth and rattled windows. Then the klaxon screamed. Boots hit the floor, shouts erupted, and the barracks filled with chaos. Emily grabbed her rifle, heart hammering. The air smelled of burning fuel. Smoke seeped through the cracks as she bolted into the corridor, colliding with half-dressed trainees scrambling for gear. Outside, fire tore across the perimeter. A truck, rigged with explosives, had rammed the gate, blasting it open. Through the smoke, figures moved, dozens of them, armed, disciplined, firing in controlled bursts as they poured through the breach. Restoration had come. Positions, Bull's voice roared above the chaos. He moved like a man 30 years younger, rallying students, directing fire, returning shots with his old service pistol. Sarah grabbed Emily by the arm, dragging her toward the eastern wall. High ground now. They scrambled up the embankment, bullets snapping past, dirt spitting at their heels. Emily's lungs burned, her legs screaming, but adrenaline pushed her forward. From the ridge, she dropped prone, unfolded the Che-Tax bipod and sighted in. The world narrowed through her scope. Figures blurred in smoke and flame, muzzle flashes strobing the night. She fired, one target dropped, another. Her hands steadied, her mind snapping into the tunnel vision Michael had once taught her. Don't see the chaos, see the line, see the shot. But for every man she cut down, more surged through the breach. Below, Bull fought like a beast, rallying the untested trainees. Reed fired beside him, face pale but jaw set, his bravado burned away by survival. Then Sarah's voice cut sharp. Davis on the field. Emily swung her scope. There he was, Mason Davis, towering above the fight, barking orders, his rifle steady as he advanced. He moved without fear, like a man who knew the night was his. Emily's finger tightened on the trigger. But then she froze. Through the smoke, Davis wasn't alone. He dragged someone with him, a hostage. Frank Wilson, the academy's administrator, bloodied, bound, pushed forward as a shield. Her heart lurched. Davis raised his voice, carrying across the chaos. Bull, Sarah, you think you can burn my house down and hide? Time to settle this. He shoved Frank forward. The old man stumbled, fell to his knees, Davis's rifle pressed against his skull. Come out, Davis roared, or I paint these grounds with his brains. The gunfire slowed. The compound held its breath. Sarah cursed under hers, bastards forcing a standoff. Bull's face was stone. We can't give him Wilson, but if we rush, he'll execute him before we close half the distance. Emily's chest constricted. Through her scope, she saw Frank's trembling hands, saw the cold certainty in Davis's eyes. She could end it, one shot. But the angle was wrong. Davis moved constantly, circling, keeping Frank between them. Any miss would kill the wrong man. Emily, Sarah said quietly. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed the fear. Can you do it? Emily's throat went dry. Her mind screamed. Michael's lessons, her father's warnings, every hour of training, all colliding with the impossible choice. One shot, life or death. Her hands shook. Sweat blurred her vision. She blinked hard, trying to steady. Her chest heaved. And then she saw Michael, not in flesh, not in reality, but in memory. The way he'd crouched beside her years ago, his hand steadying her shoulder, his voice calm. When the world collapses, you slow it down. When fear claws at you, you breathe through it. Because the shot isn't about you. It's about who you save. Emily exhaled. Her heartbeat slowed, her world narrowed. Davis's head moved past Frank's shoulder, just for a fraction of a second. She squeezed. The crack split the night. Davis stumbled, blood sprayed. The bullet had grazed his temple, carving flesh but not ending him. He dropped Wilson and ducked, vanishing into smoke. Damn it, Sarah hissed. The battlefield roared alive again. Gunfire erupted from every direction, restoration forces pressing harder, enraged. Emily pulled back, chambering another round, scanning desperately for Davis. But he was gone, ghost in the chaos. They fought through the night. The trainees held lines they weren't ready for. Reed dragged a wounded classmate to cover, his arrogance replaced with grim determination. Bull shouted orders until his voice cracked, his pistol empty, his body moving on sheer will. By dawn, the ground was littered with bodies. Smoke clung to the valley like a curse. The compound still stood, but barely. The gate was twisted steel, the walls scarred, the trainees bloodied and broken. Frank Wilson lived, though shaken. The wounded filled every cot. Silence hung heavy, broken only by groans of pain and the distant wail of sirens that would never come in time. Bull walked the grounds, face pale, eyes dark. Sarah stood beside Emily, her arm bandaged from a graze, her body sagging with exhaustion. Emily sat on the steps, rifle across her knees, staring blankly at the horizon. She had saved Wilson, she had wounded Davis, she had proven herself in fire. And yet she felt hollow. The faces of the dead stared at her from the smoke, her ears still rang with their screams. Sarah crouched beside her. You did what had to be done. Emily's eyes were glassy. Then why does it feel like I failed? Sarah didn't answer. She knew the feeling too well. The first real fight was never about glory. It was about loss, and loss always outweighed the tally of victories. Bull approached, his steps heavy. He's alive, he said grimly. Davis, he'll crawl back to whatever hole he came from, and when he does, he'll come harder. Sarah's jaw tightened. Then we finish it before he has the chance. Bull looked down at Emily. The girl was trembling, her hands still locked around the rifle like it might disappear if she let go. You're not ready for what's coming, he said bluntly. Emily lifted her eyes, fire flickering through her tears. Then make me ready. Bull studied her. For a long moment the old Marine said nothing. Then finally he gave a single nod. Training ends today. War begins now. The words hung heavy, final. Emily lowered her gaze back to the rifle. Michael's rifle, her brother's shadow. She had crossed the line. There was no going back. How much weight can one soul carry before it breaks? That was the question Sarah asked herself as she watched Emily train in the days after the attack. The girl was relentless. Dawn to dusk, she pushed herself past exhaustion, her body bruised, her eyes hollow. She practiced dry-fire drills until her fingers blistered, studied wind charts until her vision blurred, ran the ridges until her legs collapsed beneath her. Every mistake meant more bodies. Every flaw was another ghost on her conscience. Bull drove her mercilessly. He barked at her for every wasted motion, every imperfect adjustment, every hesitation. Again, he'd growl when her grouping at 2,000 meters was 2 inches off center. Emily would bite back tears, reset her stance and fire again. Sarah watched, torn. Part of her wanted to shield the girl, to pull her back from the edge. Another part knew the truth. If Davis came again, and he would, Emily couldn't afford to be anything less than perfect. But perfection carried a cost. Late one evening, Sarah found Emily alone by the fire pit. The girl stared into the embers, the engraved casing turning over and over in her palm. You're burning yourself out, Sarah said softly, lowering herself beside her. Emily's voice was hollow. Michael never had the chance to burn out. He died before he could. That doesn't mean you have to follow him into the ground. Emily's jaw tightened. Then what am I supposed to do? Pretend I'm not the only one who can stop Davis? Sarah's heart clenched. You're 17, you shouldn't have to carry this. But I do. Emily's eyes finally lifted, glistening in the firelight, because no one else will. Sarah wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, but she couldn't, because she knew the girl was right. The next morning, Bull gathered them in the war room. Maps covered the walls. Satellite imagery glowed on the monitors. Our contacts finally delivered, he said. Intel on restoration's next move. He pointed to a photo, an abandoned airfield 60 miles east. Crates lined the tarmac. Fuel trucks waited nearby. Davis is consolidating. They're preparing a demonstration strike. Something public, something bloody. We shut it down there or we'll be watching cities burn. Sarah studied the map. What's the timeline? 2 days, Bull said. They'll move by then, which means we move first. Emily's pulse quickened. This was it, the moment everything bent toward. But Bull's next word stopped her cold. You're not going. Emily's head snapped up. What? This isn't a training op anymore, Bull said. It's a war zone. You've done enough. Emily's chest burned. You've been shaping me for this from the start. I've been preparing you to survive, Bull snapped, not to die chasing vengeance. Sarah glanced between them, her throat tight. She understood Bull's fear, but she also saw Emily's fire. Bull, she said carefully, we need her. His eyes hardened. What we need is soldiers we can count on, not children chasing ghosts. Emily's voice shook, but not with fear, with fury. You think this is about me? This is about Michael, about every weapon Davis moves, every life he's ready to burn. If I walk away now, what was the point of any of this? The room fell silent. Finally, Bull's shoulders sagged. His voice dropped, rough with something deeper than anger. I buried too many kids already. I'm not burying you. With that, he walked out, leaving the map trembling under his heavy handprint. Emily stood frozen, chest heaving until Sarah touched her arm. He's not angry at you, Sarah said softly. He's angry at the war for needing you. But Emily pulled away, eyes blazing. Then maybe I don't need his permission. That night she packed quietly. Rifle, ammunition, Michael's casing. She slipped through the shadows toward the gate. But Bull was waiting. You think I wouldn't notice? His voice was gravel, low and steady. Emily froze. Her hands trembled on the rifle strap. You can't stop me. I could, Bull said, but I won't. She turned, startled. He stepped closer, his face lined with grief and steel. If you're going to do this, you'll do it with me. Because alone you'll die. With me, maybe you won't. Emily's throat closed. The anger drained from her chest, leaving only raw, aching relief. She nodded. When dawn broke, 3 vehicles rolled east. Bull behind the wheel, Sarah in the lead truck, Emily riding in silence. The others, trainees, wounded, exhausted, stayed behind to guard horizon. This was no longer their fight. The abandoned airfield rose out of the plain like a scar. Rusted hangars, cracked pavement, but now it bristled with restoration. Trucks, rifles, crates stacked high, men moved with discipline, not chaos. This wasn't a rabble anymore. This was an army. Through binoculars, Sarah counted. 50 at least, maybe more. Emily's pulse raced. We can't fight that many head-on. We're not, Bull said. He pointed to the fuel trucks lined along the tarmac. We cripple them before they move. One good shot turns this whole place into a funeral pyre. Emily felt the weight settle on her shoulders. Of course. It came back to the shot, always the shot. They set up on a ridge a mile out. Emily unfolded the Che-tac, adjusted scope, read the wind. Her hands moved steady, but her chest quaked with pressure. Sarah crouched beside her, voice low. You've done this before, trust it. Emily sighted in. The fuel truck filled her reticle, sunlight gleaming off the tank. She exhaled. Her world narrowed. Then movement. A figure stepped into view. Davis. He strode across the tarmac, barking orders, his head bandaged from her grazing shot. His face was twisted with fury, his eyes scanning the horizon as if he could feel them watching. Emily's hands trembled. She could end it now. One shot, not the fuel, not the crates, him. But Bull's voice was sharp. Focus on the mission, take the truck. Her heart pounded, the reticle wavered. Michael's voice echoed in her memory. When you choose the wrong target, even the perfect shot is wasted. Her breath slowed, she shifted. The crosshairs steadied on the fuel tank. She squeezed. The round struck true. The explosion tore the sky apart, fire blooming across the tarmac. Crates erupted, men scattered, chaos consumed the airfield. But through the smoke, Davis survived. He roared commands, rallying his men even as flames devoured their supplies. His eyes locked on the ridge on her. "Spotted," Sarah barked. Bullets ripped the ground around them. "Fall back," Bull roared. They scrambled down the ridge, rounds snapping through the air. Emily clutched the rifle, chest heaving. But in the chaos she saw it. Bull stumbled. A shot had caught him, tearing into his side. He fell hard, blood darkening his shirt. "Go," he barked through clenched teeth. Sarah dropped beside him, dragging at his arm. "Get up." "I'm done," he rasped. His eyes locked on Emily, fierce even as his strength faded. "You finish this." Emily's world froze. "No," she cried, dropping beside him. "I can't." "You can," Bull said. His hand, bloody and shaking, grabbed hers. "Because you already have. Michael saw it. Sarah sees it. Now believe it yourself." Tears blurred her vision. Her chest broke open with grief, but his grip was iron. "Go," he whispered. "Make the shot." Gunfire closed in. Sarah's voice broke, raw and desperate. "Emily." With a sob, Emily tore herself away, running with Sarah as Bull's pistol barked defiantly against the night, covering them until the end. They fled through fire and smoke, the echo of his sacrifice pounding in their hearts. When they finally collapsed in cover, Emily's body shook with sobs. The casing pressed into her palm, searing hot with memory. Michael, Bull, the weight of both crushed her chest. But beneath the grief, something else flickered. Resolve. Because she knew now, this wasn't just about her brother. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about finishing what they had both started. And Mason Davis had just signed his own death warrant. How do you carry on when the ones who made you who you are gone? That question carved through Emily's chest as she crouched in the ashes of the ridgeline, the smoke of the burning airfield curling into the dawn sky. Bull was gone. Michael was gone. All she had left was Sarah, the rifle in her hands, and the weight of the fight that now belonged to her alone. They moved in silence through the forest, slipping away from the chaos. Restoration forces scattered across the valley, regrouping in fury, searching the tree line for the shooters who had gutted their stockpile. Emily's body ached, every muscle screaming, but her mind burned with a clarity she had never felt before. Davis had lived. She had seen him through the smoke, face bloodied, voice rising above the inferno, still rallying his men. He would not stop, not until she stopped him. By the time they reached Horizon, the survivors were waiting. Reed, bloodied but alive, stood among them. His arrogance was gone, replaced with something raw and heavy in his eyes. "Where Bull?" he asked. Sarah's silence was the answer. The group sagged under the weight of it. Bull had been their anchor, their commander, their iron wall. Without him, they felt adrift. But Emily felt something different. His absence wasn't a void. It was a hand pressing her forward. His last words still rang in her ears. "You finish this." That night Sarah found her in the library, hunched over maps, tracing lines, calculating. "You're not sleeping," Sarah said softly. "Neither are you," Emily replied. Sarah exhaled, dropping into the chair across from her. "You know what you're doing." Emily's eyes burned. Davis will strike again. Not in months, not in weeks, in days. He's desperate now. He'll want to prove he's still in control. Sarah nodded slowly. "And you think you know where?" Emily slid a marked map across the table. "The Senators' rally, 2 days from now. Downtown, my father speaking, big crowd, symbolic target." Sarah's jaw tightened. "God." Emily's hand clenched into a fist. "He wants me there. That's why he's left me alive. To make me watch him tear down everything Michael and Bull died for." Sarah studied her for a long time. Then she leaned forward, voice low. "Then we don't give him the chance." 2 nights later they were in the city. The rally loomed on the horizon, an open square, banners strung across government buildings, a stage bathed in floodlights. Crowds gathered, restless, unaware of the shadow hanging above them. Emily and Sarah set up in a forgotten high-rise overlooking the square. The building smelled of dust and mold, the windows cracked. Emily laid the Che tack on its bipod, adjusting the scope, her notebook open with calculations. The range, 3,800 meters. Her breath caught when she measured it. The same impossible distance she had once made in Afghanistan. The distance no one had believed a shot could be made. The distance Michael had prepared her for. Sarah crouched beside her, scanning with binoculars. "You're certain he'll come?" "He'll come," Emily said, her voice steel. "He needs to end this where it began. Public spectacle, a message." The crowd thickened below. On stage, her father stepped to the podium, the senator's voice echoing across the square. Emily's chest tightened. She hadn't seen him in months. He looked older, more fragile than she remembered, but his words carried power, conviction. And then movement. Through her scope she saw him, Mason Davis, rooftop across the square, a heavy rifle in his hands. His face was bandaged, twisted with fury, eyes locked on the stage. Her father. Emily's blood froze. "Target acquired," she whispered. Sarah tensed. "You have the shot." Emily swallowed hard. 3,800 meters, wind curling down the street canyons, the faint shimmer of heat distortion from rooftop vents. It was the shot of her life, the shot Bull had prepared her for, the shot Michael had died for. Her hand steadied, her breath slowed. Through the reticle, she saw Davis's finger tighten on the trigger. She exhaled, squeezed. The crack split the night. For a heartbeat, silence. Then Davis's head snapped back. His rifle clattered from his hands. His body crumpled onto the rooftop. The square erupted, shouts, panic, guards rushing to shield the senator. But Emily's world had narrowed to that single fallen figure, Mason Davis, finished. Her chest heaved, tears spilling hot down her face. Not from triumph, from release, from the weight finally breaking. Sarah's hand gripped her shoulder, steady, solid. "You did it." Emily closed her eyes. For a moment she could hear Michael's voice, Bull's voice, both telling her the same thing: precision saves lives. Hours later, long after the square had cleared, Emily stood on the rooftop alone. The city glowed beneath her, endless lights stretching into the dark. She pulled the engraved casing from her pocket, for Michael. She placed it gently on the ledge, the wind catching against it. "I hope I made you proud," she whispered. Her throat tightened, but she didn't cry, not this time. Because she understood now. The fight wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about records or recognition or even justice for one man. It was about carrying forward what they had left behind. Sarah appeared at her side, silent. The older woman didn't speak, didn't intrude. She simply stood with her, sharing the quiet. Together, they looked out at the city. The war wasn't over. It never truly was. There would always be another Davis, another fight waiting in the shadows. But Emily Lawson had crossed the threshold. She was no longer the senator's daughter, no longer the grieving sister. She was a sniper. And sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.